Welcome to the Monday edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 169, and I'm going to compare and contrast weather here in the great Northern Hemisphere. The temperature is 23 degrees. We got 2 feet of snow outside, and my name is Kevin Carlson.
And my name is David Oldham. This side of the international date line. It's already March the 23rd, and the weather is actually 23 proper degrees.
A lot of people are very familiar with your brother. We call him Peter Old. And you actually live in different countries, but you're twins and you were born together in the same country. We call that country England, or for the people in the know, it was Great Britain. Let me start now with something funny. Can you tell me the difference between a British accent and an Australian accent?
All right, it's very, very simple. First thing, of course, a British person speaks like this, very proper, and that's what English is like without any accent. You come all the way across the world here, and it's Struth, mate. Throw a prawn on the barbie, mate. I don't know if that's close to it, but that's an Australian accent for you. How was that?
That's not bad. Not bad at all.
Yeah.
I'm speaking here with David Old.
This is a knife.
David Old, Peter's twin brother, also a priest in the Anglican Communion, and we're going to talk about what's been happening down under. Basically, you're with the province in Sydney there, and you have a conference coming up called the Anglican Future Conference. And it's interesting to talk about this because it's not being held anywhere in Northern Hemisphere. It's not a breakout conference here in North America. It's not being held in England. But it's time to tell the Australian people you're here, you're alive, and there's a future for Anglicanism in Down Under. Now,
that's absolutely right. So a number of us, of course, went to GAFCON in Nairobi almost 1.5 years ago now, and as part of that, you were there as well, Kevin. You'll know that we broke into our geographical area groups, one of which was Australia, New Zealand, and some Pacific stuff. And one of the things we said is we need to meet locally. We need to establish our own local grouping, and it's happening. Tomorrow evening I fly down to Melbourne, or Melbourne, for all your American viewers. And on Wednesday morning here, we start the Anglican Future Conference 15 here in Australia. There'll be some guys from New Zealand and some of the Pacific Islands nearby. It's going to be a great time.
Well, you have Ashley Null, who I've recorded a couple times at Mere Anglicanism. And so if you're bringing some people from the Northern Hemisphere, and you obviously have a goal and a theme, what's the theme of this conference?
Well, there's two things that are really going on. One of them is simply encouragement in the gospel for evangelicals and for Anglo-Catholics who are gospel believers to come together and to mutually encourage one another to keep going with gospel work. That's always going to be the primary call of Christians when they meet together, and of course was the primary call of GAFCON. The other thing that will be happening, of course, however, is there'll be a bit of a line in the sand being drawn. And we want to say to the National Church here in Australia, and perhaps even more strongly for those in New Zealand where it's pushing ahead, that certain things are just not acceptable biblically and Christianly. And here, like in the rest of the Western world, it's human sexuality and it's sexual ethics that is going to be probably the issue on which we may have to break. And the purpose of this conference, one of them, I think, is to say you can't be surprised if you push ahead with this agenda and things happen. We're here just to tell you it's going to happen.
Well, I'm looking here, and it says the keynote speaker is the Archbishop of Melbourne. That's kind of the more progressive wing of the church down under.
Well, I'm not sure that Archbishop Freer would describe himself that way. He's the Archbishop of Melbourne and the primate elected before the General Synod last year. He sees himself, I think it's fair to say, as a bit of a conciliator, bringing people together and holding the tension together. And he is giving the opening plenary address at GAFCON.
GAFCON?
Not GAFCON. Not global, Austria, AFCON. AFCON? Yeah. Anglican Future Conference, they're calling it. Who knows? Same movement. Let's not act like it's not. It's exactly the same movement. So Philip Freer is the Archbishop of Melbourne and Primate of Australia now, and since the conference is in Melbourne, I understand it was deemed to be the right thing to have him give the opening plenary address, let the hearer understand. And I think there's a degree of interest in what he's going to say. What can he say? He has one of the most diverse, variegated, to use that word, diocese in Australia. Friends of mine who are evangelical ministers are in parishes next door to men who live with their male partners. And while Freer has done something about new licenses and that kind of thing, it still happens, it still exists. And a man who presents himself as holding everybody together, which is how he presents himself as primate and archbishop in Melbourne, is going to come and talk to a conference that doesn't like the way all that sometimes that is holding together. So that'll be fascinating. Eliud Wabukala will be giving a keynote plenary, and that's going to be stunning. Wabukala is always worth reading, I think, rather than listening to. For a Western ear, his voice is difficult to understand, and he intones himself in different ways. But pick up the script of his talk afterwards if you don't listen to it and read it. Reverend Dr. Ashley Null will be talking to us. Mark Thompson, the principal at Moore Theological College. Archbishop Glenn Davies, of course, a key mover in the GAFCON movement down here. So plenty to listen to. Lots of seminars and training things as well, thinking about how we do evangelical ministry in difficult contexts, thinking about the gender issues in our Western culture. All sorts of different things are going on. And it's going to be a great conference. Three packed days. I'm going to go to bed very tired every night.
Well, one of the interesting things that I find about Australia, and here in America, over the last 12 years with the Episcopal Church, unity meant nothing. We will be progressive. We will make changes at all cost. We don't care what happens to the church, whether it's gender politics, whether it's sexual politics, whatever it was. Parts of Australia are unity at all cost. And it's one of those remarkable things that we're not going to do anything unless we do it as a whole body. And it's neat to see that in a province.
Yeah, quite often that's the case. The Liberals, especially in senior leadership in Australia, are not quite as progressive or radical as they may be elsewhere, as you've seen in America, and in fact as some of them in England are. And there's a smaller house of bishops, so just over 20 dioceses. And so people know each other better. There's more collegiality, I understand, in the House of Bishops, even if there's not massive agreement. And so when you got something like, for example, a couple of years ago, John McIntyre beginning to speak out about stuff, it really was quite a radical thing. I understand Reverend Dr. Sarah McNeil up in Grafton now has similar views, but again is just towing the line. Now, whether you think that's, there's an integrity issue there, that's a different matter, but that they try and keep it all together is very interesting. It's also a product of our constitution. So the General Synod in Australia can't pass anything that's radical without it being approved of by the diocese as well. And so what that does is it kind of just holds everything in check. And what it will mean is that if there are any substantial changes that go forward, they'll come from a diocese rather than centrally from General Synod. And that's maybe one of the reasons that we're having the conference now, is to actually put a line in the sand, as well as encouraging each other in gospel work, to put a line in the sand and say, particularly in the area of human sexuality, which of course is where these fights always erupt, there are some places we will not go and we will not tolerate. And if you push hard there, then do not be surprised when we swing into action.
Great. Well, I've been assured they're going to videotape it and put it online, so I will link to that when it happens. I want to thank you for your time, David. And now, do you have any good stories about Peter that we should let the world know about?
I'm not sure about stories, but I've decided that this calling him the clone thing, that's not on. Every time I'm sure you speak to him, he reminds you that he was firstborn, and I think we ought to stop calling him the practice run. Better. Can I say this side of the international date line? It's March the 23rd.
Yes, you can. look better, look
Oh,
well.
when do I say that? Straight after I said my name?
Yeah, you'll catch on. 3,
Okay.
2, 1. Welcome to the Monday edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 169, and up here in the great brisk north, it's 23 degrees and I got snow everywhere. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm David Old, and this side of the international dateline, it is still March the 23rd. That's wrong, because it's already March the 23rd.
Do March 24th, son.
What?
March 24th.
March 24th?
Yes.